Hey guys, it's good to be back again, and we just want to continue to move things along. And I know it's a little bit um, different situation, but you know what? This is preparing you possibly for the future and the way things are going to be a lot more often. Who knows? Um, so hopefully you're still staying motivated and willing to learn. That's what you need to be doing. All right, we're gonna start off with a new topic here on the carbon cycle. We've talked about water and how it cycles, and you have an idea what that means. It gets recycled. Same thing here with different elements. So carbon is really it's an important element, and hopefully you'll see why that is as we get through this. Um, we've been saying that all together we've got the biosphere, you got the different parts that make up the biosphere, and carbon can be in the atmosphere, it can be in the lithosphere, it can also be in the hydrosphere. So what we're going to look at is how does carbon move throughout the different spheres, and why is carbon important? Why would I take time to talk about carbon? Well, it is really an important element. Okay, so that's actually a learning target. Why is carbon important for plants? Why is it important for animals? And it is important for both. All right, this video here I'd like you to watch. They talk about how everything needs carbon. What all these different things have in common, and you'll see that is carbon. So yeah, it's okay quality, but just give it a look, and we'll talk afterwards.
A pile of coal, the sun's awesome energy, a cloud-patched sky, a pony grazing. They're all very different, but they all share one very important thing in common. They're all involved in one way or the other in the carbon cycle, one of nature's most important recycling processes. All life, be it animal, plant, fungi, or any other kind, depends on certain key chemicals for its very existence. Without these all-important chemicals, there can be no life, no living organisms of any kind. And here, in the form of coal, is one of the most important of these chemicals, carbon. Carbon is a must for all life.
All right, so all those things have in carbon. They have carbon within them, and that's really what makes it important. All right, if we look at this question, and this would be a keypad question if you had one, why is carbon important? Animals need it to breathe, plants and animals need it to grow, or plants need it as fertilizer. Take a look. See the result here, computer simulation, and the correct answer. If I can get that to show, I just rushed it. It was answer 2, and I don't know why that didn't show up. But anyway, plants and animals need it to grow. This slide here says that carbon it's like the backbone of many molecules, and I'll show you what that means here in a minute. I'll show you some pictures of some molecules. Sure, it's what you want to look at today, molecules. But all living things have carbon, and this element, again, if it weren't for carbon, a lot of the structures that make us up wouldn't happen. So second most abundant element in our bodies next to oxygen. All right, if you look at this, and I was kind of joking on the reading that you did that if anyone ever tells you you're full of crap, well, you can say, well, actually, I'm full of carbon, and kind of mess with them a little bit. But if you see in this, so for a person that's 110 pounds, they'd be 24.2 pounds of carbon. So yeah, you're full of a good bit of carbon, I would say. Every one of us. Good bit of oxygen too. I'm kind of surprised at 66 pounds of oxygen. And some of that would be in the form of water, because water is H2O. But nonetheless, carbon, very important element. And so we'll see how that works as we go along. In this diagram, we're talking about, how do we go from atoms to a person? Well, you start to put atoms together and you get molecules. You start putting molecules together and you get these, what they're calling a macromolecule. And the black atoms in here, they're kind of small for you to see there, but those are carbon atoms. So they kind of form the center of a lot of molecules. And carbon can be in different forms, so we're going to look at that, and I'll show you some more structures of molecules. But it says carbon can exist in what form in nature? You think carbon is mostly a solid? You think carbon is mostly a gas? Or do you think it can be both? Click this again. Hopefully it reveals the correct answer. And the answer is both. And I'm not sure why. Okay, get a check mark. And things. Participant scores, not showing any. I think I need to change the setting, but at this point I don't want to start back over. So we're going to roll with it. But anyway, carbon can be in the gas form. So if you've heard of carbon dioxide, that's a gas. Carbon monoxide is also a gas, poisonous gas. CH4 is methane. We call it natural gas. So these are all gas forms of carbon. Okay. It can also be as a solid. So if you put sugar in tea, or if you put sugar in your cereal, or whatever else you put sugar in, that is a solid form of carbon. Diamonds are basically carbon. Coal, plants and animals, I think we consider them mostly solid. That's how carbon can be in different forms. So that is gas and solid. Now this shows foods, and you know what? We even talk about this. You'll talk about this in health class, that there are such things as carbohydrates. Well, that carbo that refers to carbon. So a lot of the foods we shorten that and we say carbs that you eat. You get a lot of carbs. So those comes from breads and grain and vegetables, and some of those are maybe a little better for us than others. But that's what we call carbohydrates, and that's how we get carbon. Okay, from the food that we eat, and our bodies can use that to build structures in our bodies. So it's important to know that. I wanted to show you this molecule of sugar, and glucose is what plants will make. A lot of plants. So that what I want you to notice about this is the carbon. See this chain of carbons and all the oxygen and hydrogen connected to it. That's really what glucose is. Sugar is. It's carbon with oxygen and hydrogen. Fructose is another form of sugar, a lot of fruits. So this is probably more of the sugar that you're used to, that from sugarcane plant. And they make fructose, and you can see what it's the same thing. It's carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. So there's different ways of showing that, but again, we're trying to highlight that carbon makes up them, and that's an important thing. And so actually, this shape here, each connecting line here, that represents a carbon. Carbon's such an abundant in nature, they quit even labeling the carbon. They just draw these different shapes, and every connection, you just know that, okay, there's another carbon there. So they're still showing starches, cellulose, glycogen. If you've heard of any of those molecules, or you may in the future, those are made of carbon, call them carbon chains, just bunches and bunches of carbon and other things connected to it. So, point I'm trying to make here, carbon is an important element in all the foods that we eat. It's an important part of our bodies, and that's why we eat food, to get carbon. And so we don't have to worry about running out of carbon either, because it gets recycled. So here's another little video clip. I'll have you watch this one as well, and then we'll talk afterwards.
And that brings us to an interesting question. After all the hundreds of millions of years that living things of one kind or the other have inhabited the planet Earth and used the carbon around them in the process, how is it that there are any carbon atoms left today? How is it that living things did not use up the Earth's supply of carbon atoms long?
I think we lost the audio on that. I'm not sure what happened. A lot of glitches today, but that's okay. What he was saying is we don't run out of carbon. We continue to recycle it, and there's steps to recycle that, and we'll get to that. You'll see how it goes basically from the air back into the soil, as we said in the opening slide there, how it goes through the different spheres of the earth. That's the recycling of carbon. Now here's a diagram showing the carbon cycle. Now we'll start off talking about in the atmosphere we have carbon dioxide, which is a good thing for plants. Plants need carbon dioxide. Now, too much carbon dioxide is affecting the planet, and it's trapping in heat, and that's the cause of climate change. A big part of that's carbon dioxide, the greenhouse effect. But we do need a certain amount of carbon in the atmosphere. Okay, now this arrow coming down here, plants can take in carbon dioxide, and what they will do in the process of photosynthesis, they will create another form of carbon. This was glucose. So this is that sugar that I showed you. So plants will take in, they actually need 6 of these molecules to make this bigger molecule here that has 6 carbons. So it's going to take 6 of these, 6 carbons, to make 1 molecule of sugar. And we'll get to that later. But that's what plants do. That is photosynthesis. Now, you've got another arrow coming back out. And what animals will do, when animals eat the plant and ingest the sugar, this large molecule will get broken down back into carbon dioxide. So really you have a cycle right here where carbon gets built into glucose gets broken back down into carbon dioxide, and that process is called respiration. I know you've heard of photosynthesis. A lot of times you don't hear about respiration, but it's equally important for all cells. They have to get energy, so they need carbon to do that, and the carbon in the form of glucose. Now there's more to this cycle. Sometimes carbon can go into the ground and be there for a while, turn to oil products or coal. Carbon within plants can be burned, so that there's actually lots of ways CO2 can get back to the atmosphere, and that's why we have too much carbon in the atmosphere. But plants are very important taking in CO2. Not just plants, but things in the ocean like plankton and algae. So there are some other producers. We learned that when we study ecosystems. So that is the carbon cycle, just to explain that a little bit. And we'll finish up here talking about how plants get carbon and how animals get carbon. And actually, I'm going to save that for next time and maybe fix some of the glitches here going on. But thanks for listening, and I'll have some questions for you.